maison, c'est au-dessus de mes forces.
Les gamins, là, qu'on aide, c'est tout sauf des enfants de cœur.
Je suis délinquant, condamné plusieurs fois. Cette marche, c'est ma dernière chance.
Vous avez pas des procès-verbaux d'interrogatoire, des saisies?
Oh, on baisse le chauffage, Guilou, d'accord?
Guylaine.
Hello and welcome to Arts24. It's time for our weekly dive into French cinema, and for this I'm joined by our film critic Manon Kerjean. Hi Manon.
Hello.
We begin today with La Femme de, or Mrs. in English. This is the latest film from David Roux. After his debut L'Ordre des Médecins, or Breath of Life, he returns with a very different story this time, centred on a woman trapped in the codes of the French bourgeoisie. Manon, what did you make of it?
Well, it's a very subtle film, but it's also quite unsettling. We follow Marianne, played by Mélanie Thierry, who seems to have the perfect life, a wealthy husband, a beautiful house and family. But this life is actually a trap where she completely erased herself. And what's interesting is that the film isn't about the bourgeoisie. It really unfolds within it. And you feel all these unspoken rules, the weight of tradition, of family expectations. And it actually echoes the work of French director Claude Chabrol, who used to explore these milieux with the same precision. Let's take a look.
Cette maison, c'est au-dessus de mes forces. C'est sa famille. À une époque, rien que l'idée de travailler avec ton père, ça te rendait malade. T'as repris sa boîte et maintenant tu voudrais vivre ici? Il priait pour avoir un garçon, pour avoir un héritier à qui passer la main, comme son père, comme son grand-père.
Rien ne t'obligeait à acquérir nos parts. Aucun de nous ne demandait ça.
Épargne-nous tes délires paranoïaques.
It does seem tense and quite slow-paced. So how does the director go about telling this story?
Well, it doesn't rely on big dramatic moments. It shows the more insidious, everyday form of domination, the kind that are almost invisible. And visually, the setting plays a big role too. The house is almost like a prison. Plus, the film was shot in winter, so everything feels frozen. Even the landscape itself seems to block any possible escape for her.
It does seem a bit chilly, that not cozy at all. So I guess that in this central role, Mélanie Thierry has to carry the whole film.
Yes, she's incredible. She's kind of our Michelle Williams in France.
Okay.
She's mostly known abroad for her roles in The Hollow Crown and The Princess of Montpensier. And here it's quite a restrained performance, but there's a kind of tension beneath the surface, like something is about to break at any moment. And I also loved the nuanced feminist point of view, because the film doesn't deal with the most visible forms of patriarchy, and that's why it feels so real and so contemporary in this precise social background, of course.
So maybe even an update of Claude Chabrol, as you mentioned there. Well, moving on now to Compostelle, a road movie set along the famous pilgrimage route to Santiago de Compostela, which is between France and Spain. It follows Adam, a troubled teenager, and Fred, a suspended teacher, who are forced to walk together for a few weeks as part of a reintegration program. So it does sound like quite a powerful premise.
Yes, on paper, it really does. The idea of walking as a way to rebuild yourself is quite compelling. And the film is inspired by real-life initiatives, particularly an association that helps young offenders through long-distance hiking. You can feel that the director genuinely believes in the project, and he also puts a very strong emphasis on landscapes and nature, offering beautiful shots of France and Spain. Here is a glimpse.
Et avant de vous quitter et de vous souhaiter bon vent pour ce pèlerinage, je crois comprendre que certains d'entre vous viennent de contrées lointaines.
Brest,
Mulhouse,
Oslo.
le Rémy-Rogis.
Moi aussi.
Les gamins, là, qu'on aide, c'est tout sauf des enfants de cœur.
Je suis délinquant, condamné plusieurs fois. Cette marche, c'est ma dernière chance. Si je force la prison.
Je suis prof dans un lycée. Les ados, je les connais mieux que moi-même. Ça fait 15 ans que je leur donne une seconde chance. Ça valait le détour, non?
T'emmerdes.
You're right, some of those shots do look like an advert for the tourist board of the regions involved. But what about the film? Is it convincing on screen?
Not entirely for me. It's a film I really wanted to love because I'm a big fan of Yann Samuel's earlier work with Jeux d'enfants. The English title is Love Me If You Dare, and it's a classic from the 2000s. But here I found the film quite classical in its storytelling. You can clearly see where it's going from very early on. And it also felt a bit didactic. It's constantly trying to demonstrate something rather than letting the story unfold naturally.
And I spotted Alexandre Lamy in the trailer there. What about the performances here? How did you find them?
Well, she brings a lot of energy, that's undeniable. And the director actually cast her slightly against type, using her natural likability to reveal a more closed-off, fragile character. And that works quite well. And I was also pretty impressed with Julien Lebert acting. And the dynamic between the two avoids the cliché of a mother and son relationship. So overall, it's a film with a strong humanistic message, and I can see why it might resonate with some audiences. But for me, it clearly lacked subtlety and surprise.
Okay. Well, let's move on to a very different kind of film now, one that blurs the line between documentary and fiction. L'œuvre invisible, or Unseen Pictures, tells the story of a forgotten filmmaker, Alexandre Tranoï, who spent decades trying to make films but never managed to finish a single one. It's a very unusual investigation, almost like chasing a ghost. Let's take a look.
Alexandre Tranoï. Je n'avais jamais entendu parler de lui.
C'est là qu'il m'a dit « Tu joueras les rôles principaux de tous mes films ». C'est un peu nostalgique tout ça tout de même, d'y penser quand on sait ce qui est advenu.
Un cinéaste qui, en 30 ans de carrière, n'aurait pas terminé un seul film.
Qui est le vrai Alexandre Tranoï?
Je ne peux pas vous le dire.
Je cherche des images de ces films. Partout la même réponse. Rien.
A mysterious vibe indeed. Manon, what did you think of this film?
I actually really loved this one. It's a deeply poetic film, and it's also a beautiful tribute to cinema itself. We're talking about a filmmaker whose work literally doesn't exist, and yet he managed to convince big French cinema stars who we just saw in the clip, like Jean Rochefort, Anouk Aimée, or Claude Lelouch. And the film portrays him almost like a Don Quixote of cinema, someone driven by an incredible passion, but constantly failing. And there's something both tragic and beautiful in that.
But how do you make a film? I mean, how do you even start making a film about someone whose films don't exist?
Well, that's exactly the challenge, and that's what makes the film so fascinating. The directors embrace that absence. They don't try to solve the mystery. They turn it into a kind of cinematic investigation instead, like a puzzle with missing pieces. And there's also a strong sense of nostalgia, as it feels like a love letter to a disappearing world, the era of film reels, and all the movie theaters that have closed down in Paris.
Yeah, that's true. So beyond this mystery part, what's the film actually about?
Well, for me, it's about creation and failure. The film suggests that not succeeding doesn't necessarily mean not existing. So overall, it's quite slow, it's very contemplative, sometimes deliberately elusive. But if you like cinema history, it's a really unique experience.
Okay, a deep dive there into the creative process. Well, let's end with something quite nostalgic, but also on a lighter note. This is Police Flash 80. It's a retro action comedy set in the 1980s. The film follows a very unlikely police unit led by the old school cop who happens to be a fan of French singer Michel Sardou. Manon, what kind of a ride is this?
So the film follows this highly dysfunctional brigade trying to take down drug trafficking. And the pleasure really comes from the group dynamic. You've got Belgian actor François Damiens as this outdated, clueless boss doing what he does best, acting very seriously while saying completely absurd things.
Fantastic, always.
And then you've got Audrey Lamy, the sister of Alexandre Lamy, who we just saw in Compostelle. And she's the real brain of the team. And the film truly relies on their performance and rhythm. And there's also a lot of improvisation, which makes it spontaneous and even funnier.
Okay, so there's plenty of parody then, but they do do they do anything else, anything more with this 1980s setting?
It is more than just parody. The film really plays with the macho police figures, the hierarchy, the sense that everything was allowed in France back in the days. But it looks at all of that from a contemporary perspective. So there's a bit of satire here, especially about masculinity and how much things have changed. But you can feel that it was made by people who genuinely love that era of cinema. The slightly over-the-top police films with stars like Jean-Paul Belmondo or Alain Delon.
Classics indeed. But among all the French comedies then, is there anything that makes it stand out?
Well, I'd say it's the mix of genres. It's not just a comedy, it's also an action film with crazy chases, and that combination works quite well. And it also tries to say something about society, about how we look back at the past, this idea that the 80s were a time of total freedom, which is maybe a bit of a fantasy. So it's not trying to reinvent the genre, but it's energetic and clearly made with a lot of affection for both comedy and 80s cinema. And sometimes that's exactly what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to laugh at the cinema. Thank you so much for that roundup, Manon. We'll leave you with some of those retro comedy scenes from Police Flash 80. Do join us next time here on Arts 24 for more movies, arts and culture. There's more news coming up just after this.
Excusez-moi, mais c'est quoi ce bordel ici, là?
Guylaine Robles-Bernard.
Dans 2 secondes, cocotte.
Le ministre m'a demandé de créer une brigade spéciale, les meilleurs d'Île-de-France, la police Flash 80.
Oh non, en plus, j'aime pas le nom.
Vous en étiez où de l'enquête sur le trafic d'héroïne?
Tous mes dealers me disent que tu prends 20% de la recette.
Vous avez pas des procès-verbaux d'interrogatoire, des saisies?
Oh, on baisse le chauffage, Guilou, d'accord?
Guylaine.
Il y a un patron, hein. Il y a un coq dans un poulailler, il n'y en a pas 2. Hein.
Cette jeunesse sombre toujours dans la délinquance.
C'est la jeunesse d'aujourd'hui.
T'as raison, on n'a pas eu cette chance.
Voilà.
Nordis, arrête!